Another week, another new batch of information about Fallout 76. Last Saturday, a Fallout 76 panel was hosted at QuakeCon. We got a lot of new info about specific aspects of the game, much of which came in the form of a Q&A that covered topics that the community has been the most curious about. The biggest subjects they discussed were the core skill system of the game, as well as how PvP works. Among other things, they also touched on griefing, communication, and how they're committed to mods in Fallout 76. Without further ado, let's get right into it. The game begins with you creating your character, just like always. There are more options than ever, and you can take a photo of your character to serve as your ID badge. You can change the field of view, zoom level, filters, poses, etc., and customize the badge to your liking. You can take these pictures at any point throughout the game, and whatever you take will appear in loading screens. At any point during the game, you can change your character's appearance. They mentioned that you can even change your character's sex if you like. When you level up, you get to increase one of your special attributes, and select a perk card. A menu appears that asks you which special attribute you want to increase, and when you pick one, you get a list of all the available perk cards that you can take under that attribute at your level. It seems like you don't get to see all future perks available from a given attribute, only what you can currently unlock. There are hundreds of perk cards, but you can only have a limited number active at once, as determined by your special stats. Each perk card takes up a certain amount of points, with higher level perks requiring more. You can equip as many perk cards in each attribute as you have points. So if you have 2 perk cards in strength with the value of 1 and 2, you'll need 3 points total in strength to equip them both at the same time. Each card has ranks that can be increased. Taking a perk to the next rank increases its effectiveness, but also how much it costs to equip. For example, the Gladiator perk increases melee damage by 10% and costs 1 strength to equip. But if you get the second rank, it increases damage by 20% and costs 2 to equip. It can be in your interest to not take a perk to the next rank if you only have a small number of points left over and are using it to fill in the gaps. Ranking up a card is done by selecting a duplicate of that card and then combining them into one. There's no hard level cap, but since it's a multiplayer game, care was taken to prevent super high level characters from becoming grossly overpowered. Next, they showed a character that was at level 42. They explained that the cap for any given attribute is 15, which means you can have up to 15 points worth of cards in each attribute. The highest level cards cost 5 points to equip. You can take any perk whenever you meet the requirements, and there's no random element to core progression. You can swap out your perks at any time for different perk cards that you already have unlocked. They were asked about how charisma worked in a multiplayer game and shared that charisma perks focus on group play and allow you to share the effects of perk cards with your group more efficiently. There's a Lone Wanderer perk that buffs you when you're playing solo, and that's under the charisma attribute, but for the most part, charisma is focused on group play. Going back to the fact that you can switch your perk cards around, they gave an example on why that can be valuable. Say you mostly play solo and you have the Lone Wanderer perk. Then your friend invites you to a group. Lone Wanderer only benefits solo players, so instead of the perk being wasted, you can just switch it out for something that's beneficial to the group. Maybe somebody you play with is spec'd out to be able to carry lots of stuff without being weighed down, but then when you play solo, you need to be able to do that as well, so you can just switch your perk cards to enable you to carry more. But in addition to core progression, there are also perk card packs. Now, before I talk about perk card packs, I just want to say that Pete Hines has already confirmed on Twitter that you cannot purchase them with real money. You can only earn them by playing the game and leveling up. This is consistent with their previous message that microtransactions in Fallout 76 would only be cosmetic. Now that we know that there's nothing to freak out about, let's talk about perk card packs. You get a perk card pack every other level for the first 10 levels, and then after that, you get them every 5. The purpose of this is to give you perks to experiment with. Maybe you didn't realize how much you liked luck perks until you got one randomly in a pack and tried it out, then you decided that you want to be more focused on luck instead. Perk card packs provide 4 random perk cards that are automatically given to you regardless of level. You could have picked these cards yourself, but it's a way of giving you more options that you might not have been willing to spend a point on when you leveled up. Every pack of cards comes with a joke and a stick of gum. If you chew the gum, it reduces your hunger for a while. You start the game with one of every special attribute, so when you get cards in packs, you can slot them in right away. One example of how perk packs can be interesting is that maybe a perk that increases how much ammo you find in containers doesn't seem too exciting at first glance. Then you draw that card in a pack and you equip it because you can, and you realize how valuable that type of thing is. The packs are designed to expose you to these types of situations and encourage you to try things that you normally wouldn't have. On levels where you get a pack, you still get to unlock a perk like you normally would. So you can still pick a perk that you meet the requirements for and then get 4 random ones on top of that instead of having one or the other. Sometimes with card packs, you can actually draw cards that you don't meet the requirements for. So say your agility is low, but you get really lucky and draw a higher level agility perk. Once you hit level 50, you don't get to keep increasing your special attributes. You can still keep taking perks, but you're limited to how many you can equip at once to put a stop to that power curve and make it fair to other players. This is in contrast with Skyrim and Fallout 4, where you just keep getting stronger if you go past level 50. Now I want to get a little bit into the Q&A section. I'll throw the questions up on screen and give you a rundown of the answers. These are not direct quotes unless noted. I'm paraphrasing the questions and I'm paraphrasing the answers. They're still working on it, and there are still things that they know they have to fix before it goes live. Even though the beta is very close to release, since it's a live game, feedback is absolutely crucial for the direction of the game as they continue to update it. They called it the Break It Early test application for a reason. It is going to break. They've never done a multiplayer game like this, and it's going to be a huge stress test for their infrastructure. You have to be ready for it to break. They want to spend every minute they can before the beta is released working on it to make sure that they can fix the issues that pop up as fast as possible. They have a roadmap for their idea of how the game will be updated. They expect it to be a very different game a year after release, and they have big plans for what they want to do, and the beta is only the first step towards those goals. The game is designed to be both PvE and PvP as a core part of the experience. They want you to have a sense of danger around those other players. They mentioned that it might sound strange to say, but they want you to have that sense of danger without griefing. When you shoot another player, you only do a small amount of damage to them, akin to an annoyance or an invitation to PvP. If the other player shoots you back and engages you, the kid gloves come off and everybody starts doing full damage. There's a cap reward for killing another player. The higher their level, the bigger the reward, and after you die, you can choose to seek revenge, which doubles the cap value that the enemy who killed you is worth. Even if you do not engage the enemy, they can eventually kill you with reduced damage. They mentioned that sounds terrible, but if you do it to somebody who doesn't want to fight, you get no reward and you become a wanted murderer. When you become a murderer, a bounty is placed on you and is sent out to every single player in the game. When a wanted murderer is killed, they pay the bounty out of their own cap supply. On top of that, a murderer loses their ability to see all the other players on the map, and their position on the map is visible to every player, even when they're sneaking. Their goal with this was to turn players who are out to ruin the experience of others into interesting content, and they said that they're really happy with how this all works. As a side note, when you see other players on the map, you don't get their exact location, you only get the general area that they're in. I think that this is a really elegant solution because it simultaneously reduces the ability of a problem player to grief others and makes it so they'll be the ones who are getting griefed instead. Originally, there was no penalty for death, but it took all the sting out of dying. Now when you die, you lose whatever junk you're carrying. Junk isn't worthless, but it's not like losing valuable weapons or armor either. When you die, you can go back to where you died in order to reclaim your junk if you feel up to it. You can store your junk in stashes between trips, which makes it so it can't be stolen. Stashes are found in your camp and just generally scattered around the game world. Since junk is everywhere, it's not enough to make death suck too badly, but if you kill another player, you can rob their junk. They think that the death penalty that they settled on is the perfect balance. It's not enough to make dying horrible, but it is enough to make you consider your actions. You can respawn wherever you've discovered, like fast travel. Respawning at the closest point to you or at Vault 76 is free. If you want to respawn very far away, it costs a small amount of caps. Todd Howard cut in here to tell people that PvP also doesn't kick in until level 5. It makes it so you have to have a firm grasp on the game before you can even engage or be engaged by another player. You can also choose to ignore specific players. If a player kills you, a button prompt appears allowing you to ignore them for that session. If you ignore them, they can't see you on the map, which makes it pretty much impossible for them to mess with you due to the size of the game world. They're also working on a pacifist flag that you can activate so your stray bullets will never harm another player by mistake. They mentioned how players who were trying to egg other players on would wait for them to shoot a creature, then run in front of them in order to grief them, and the pacifist flag was born. They also ran QA tests where they would encourage their players to be the biggest griefers that they could be. This allowed them to get a lot of useful information that helped them to combat griefing. They struggled with that. What they settled on was different power curves for PvE and PvP. In PvP, stat differences and gear values are normalized, so players with a large difference in levels are closer together in terms of effectiveness against each other than they are against the AI. An example given is that fighting a guy in power armor with a minigun is obviously going to be harder, but if you get the drop on him with a knife, it does kind of work. It makes it more fun because you can employ different strategies to kill other players. There is still a power curve and higher level players will have an advantage, but not as much as PvE. Your incentive to kill somebody who's way higher of a level than you is a much larger cap reward. You don't lose all your stuff when you get nuked. The structures are destroyed if your camp is in an area where it's been nuked, but the blueprint system lets you replace everything very easily. If you spend hours building a house, you can save that whole structure as a blueprint, and you can easily place it down again either to make repairs or just to move your camp. They also mentioned that the only reason camp destruction exists at all is so players can't trap each other in their camps. Trapping players was something that people were doing to grief each other, and you always need to be able to break structures so this never happens. It just so happens that this destruction mechanic carries over to nukes. But the camp system can also be really cool for PvP. If you lure an enemy back to your camp maybe, where some turrets are waiting, you get the idea. The emote wheel is a lot of fun, and they wanted to create an experience with positive interactions between strangers. They found that the emote wheel alone just wasn't leading to those interesting experiences, so they enabled global voice chat that you can opt into if you want. This lets you talk with those random strangers in the game. Before, only voice chat in a group was supported. The global chat is proximity based, so only the players around you can hear you. VATS is in real time. At first, you can only target an entire enemy, not specific body parts, because it can be challenging to line up your shots quickly. If you like how VATS works, you can get a perk that allows you to select body parts like normal. VATS score is still determined by your perception, and it's also still good to find enemies that you can't see. Since your perception always starts out at 1, it's not as useful out of the gate as it has been in previous games. You have to invest into it if you want your VATS to be super lethal, just like you'd have to invest into your other skills. It's really good for players who aren't as good at aiming but still want to be effective in combat. Enon Zur, no hesitation. Their exact quote was, "The soundtrack is spectacular." There's also lots of licensed music as well. There are more tracks in Fallout 76 than in any other Fallout game, and there are still radio stations for you to listen to. They've always loved that part of the series. Picking those wacky 40 songs is one of the team's favorite parts of building a Fallout game. Now, this is a big one, and I want to be 100% clear, so I'm just going to go ahead and include Todd Howard's quote directly so nobody misconstrues what was said.
That is definitely something that we are doing. We're committed to it. Modding for us, it's not just having a private server, it's being able to mod it. So mods for us have really been, once our games come out, that's what our hardcore players play. And they're still playing, Skyrim and Fallout 4, two of the still most popular games in the world, and a lot of people are playing mods. And so that is something that, given the online nature of it, is going to be very, very complicated, but we're committed to it, and we've been, starting to design what that system is going to look like. But it is, I will say this, it's a complicated problem, but one that we are 100% committed to solving.
Once again, it has been stated in no uncertain terms that Todd Howard and the entire team at Bethesda Game Studios are 100% committed to mods and private lobbies in Fallout 76. Hey everyone, that about does it for this video. Thanks for tuning in, and subscribe if you want to see more from the channel. I've had a few people reach out to me asking what they can do to help a channel my size, and the answer is just share the video. I always appreciate it when you guys do, because I want as many people to watch as possible and enjoy themselves. Once again, I appreciate all the kind words, and I'll see you next time.